And is the government now, finally, about to take back control of our borders and ignore meddling foreign judges? Rishi Sunak has promised to stop the boats, and now he's understood to have caved into backbench Tory rebels and agreed to amend the illegal migration bill. So what this would mean, in theory, is that it would allow ministers to ignore European judges in certain situations. The ECHR stopped that flight to Rwanda. It was last year. It feels like years ago now, doesn't it, as well? It was on the runway, then all of a sudden the lights went off. Turned out that the flight wasn't going anywhere. And I think a lot of people are sick and tired of anonymous foreign judges in dark rooms in the dead of night stopping us from having control of who we deport from this country, or certainly who we send to a different country for processing. Back again, a man that is impossible for me to deport is Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. Tom, what's going on here? Is this the end of meddling foreign judges?
Well, there's two ways to look at this, and the first thing to say in this conversation is we haven't yet seen the text of this amendment that we're expecting to be laid before the House as early as next Tuesday. But we do know that a deal has been reached between these rebels, led by Danny Kruger, the Conservative Member of Parliament, and the government, brokered between these rebels and the government. The rebels have been really wanting to tighten up what was already legislation designed to stop the boats, legislation designed to tighten up the system as things stand, to stop the way in which people can appeal being so liberal. But equally, there were big concerns about the way in which European judges might well be able to issue last-minute decisions that prevent these planes going off. The detail within this deal, it seems to be, would be to pass a law to allow the government to simply ignore those rulings from European judges. And there is some precedent here in terms of ignoring ECHR rulings. Because if we remember back to the start of the 2010s, when the ECHR was pushing to allow prisoner voting in the United Kingdom, they said it was a human right for prisoners to be allowed to vote in elections. Actually, what happened was a backbench cross-party bill passed the House of Commons saying, no, we will ignore this ruling, and it magically went away. When the House of Commons exerts its authority, it can push back against the ECHR. We've seen that before, and that is the idea behind this amendment.
I want to push back on the notion that it would make us some kind of European outlier with this, because there are plenty of European countries who are regarded as lovely, fluffy bastions of liberalism that actually do ignore the ECHR quite a lot.
There are examples of that. There are also examples of countries within the European Union and within the wider European landmass, for example, Sweden, that take very tough approaches from asylum seekers. They have a list of countries that they determine to be safe. If someone is determined to have been coming from one of those countries, they simply don't allow entry. Now, we don't do that in the United Kingdom. And so if we look at, for example, Albania, a country where a lot of migrants and asylum seekers have come from, the United Kingdom now has a returns agreement with Albania and is sending people back. But we don't keep that on a list in the same way that some Scandinavian countries do, saying that no one coming from that country can come and settle in the United Kingdom. Equally, I think it's worth saying that I was speaking to an immigration lawyer a little bit earlier today who was saying that the risk of this legislation is that this will take us out of kilter with our neighbours in Europe in terms of explicitly rejecting the ECHR or moving away from the ECHR. The argument goes that this would give succour to countries like Russia to then go and commit the human rights abuses that they do. But I suppose counter to that, there are lots of liberally minded Western democratic countries that aren't under the auspices of the ECHR. These include, of course, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, many Western English-speaking countries that, simply because they're not in Europe, don't follow the ECHR.
Look, Tom, thank you very, very much. It'll be fascinating to see how this develops. Of course, yesterday on this show, it did break, didn't it, ladies and gents, that the government's figures for people who they were expecting to cross the channel this year, 56,000. We've already had around 5,000 of them. That would mean around 140,000 people in hotels. So if now the government has decided that they are going to ignore, in some cases, some would argue, hopefully most, the ECHR and their rulings by, let's be honest, foreign judges, like I've said, in the dead of night and anonymously in many cases as well, to stop us from being able to deport who we want to deport or put them on planes for processing in Rwanda, etc., then actually that could be a good thing.